president of ABC just got booted. She says she's retiring. She was reportedly forced out, Kim Godwin. And as she goes, you've got the National Association of Black Journalists criticizing ABC for basically getting rid of a Black woman. They're saying, we're concerned over recent media reports that seem to be written with the intention of undermining the leadership of the first Black woman to take the helm of a global news organization. So you're not allowed to criticize her because she's the first Black woman to head a news organization. Many of the latest articles surrounding her leadership fail to demonstrate basic journalism by providing alternative viewpoints. They want more in the articles about how she was actually the greatest thing since sliced bread, even though her bosses didn't seem to think so, and neither did her underlings, according to the reports I've read, including by Oliver Darcy, who claims to have spoken to some dozens of internal ABCers. There seems to be an intentionality to cite anonymous sources as Godwin's detractors, coupled with the use of derogatory or stereotypical terms to describe her. Meantime, these reports are totally ignoring sources and facts that speak to Godwin having significant support inside the organization. Now, let me tell you what's happened. She's gone now. This didn't work. She got canned, or she says retired early. This is what this group does. I'll just say for background, when I went over to NBC, this same group came out and threw a fit because the woman who had been in my time slot prior to me was Tamron Hall, who happens to be Black. And when NBC called the National Association of Black Journalists to say, why are you giving us such a hard time about this? We have plenty of Black prominent faces at NBC. They said, we're just doing a favor. Somebody called in a favor, which was clearly Tamron Hall, right?
Yeah.
So this is what happens now, right? The people who ascend to positions of power, whether it's as an anchor or a network executive or a prosecutor, we've seen some of that in the Fannie Willis, Nathan Wade, Marilyn Mosby, who's just got in trouble. She's just got convicted twice of fraud-related behavior. She was a former Baltimore prosecutor. They rise to these positions of power if they happen to be people of color sometimes. And when it doesn't work out, Vivek, they use the race thing as both a sword and a shield, right? It's something that I'm fine to ride to the top. Like, it's fine if it's a chip for me. It gets me this advanced position. But then if it doesn't work out, I get to play the race card again, you see. And my termination is 100% because of my skin color, or your negative reports in the case of the BJ are because of skin color. Meanwhile, as I point out in my case, someone who happens to be Black behind the scenes is using skin color as a weapon. Again, it's everywhere. It's why it's so pernicious. And these promotions based on race don't work out. And then when things settle down, the natural consequences get ignored by these same cast of actors. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's starting to get a little bit old. And I think it is fostering, unfortunately, Megyn, a new wave of quiet frustration that manifests as anti-Black racism in this country that would not have existed but for this actual kind of racialized behavior. There's an article, it's a different type of media, but it's the same type of media treatment is a scientific media. This is back when I was still in the biotech industry, that examined this detailed investigative piece. It was sort of in the healthcare press. It was detailed investigative reporting, bombshell reporting that found that Black residents, so people in medical residency, those who are Black, were systematically more likely to be fired than their white counterparts and didn't finish their residency programs at the same rate, revealing a layer of systemic racism in the field of medicine that had not previously been exposed. And it goes through all of the explanations of the data points of how consistently, no matter what geography, no matter what institution, it was Black people who were more likely to be fired from their competitive residency programs midway through. I read the whole article. The journalist, she must have been, I don't know if she was in an early stage of her career. I assume she's a young journalist making a big bombshell story here. I just emailed her afterwards and asked her, had you considered the possibility that systematically the people allowed into med school and the systematically people who are allowed into residency programs have lower scores when they're a particular race, in this case, Black residents and Black med students are admitted systematically at lower scores? Is it surprising then that the people who actually tended on average to have lower scores are the ones that aren't thriving in residency programs? And might that play some role, some impact on actually seeing a disparity in the races of people who end up getting fired during residency? And her response was, I think it was genuine. She was just said, I hadn't considered that. Thank you for pointing that out to me. And I think it shows, I mean, this must be people who are younger in this profession of reporting on this, have become so inculcated by the narrative that I think it just takes basic analysis. Somebody who points a basic obvious fact that her own editors, her own publisher, her own supervisors should have, for any base level of reporting for a journalist, at least called out one contrarian hypothesis that didn't have a single mention in a 2,000-word investigative bombshell piece. And I think it shows, most people see through that, right? And so I do think it is fostering this kind of new wave of racism, even anti-Black racism that we otherwise wouldn't have seen, because when you tell people you can't criticize somebody or you can't air your opinion, that manifests itself in new and more toxic ways. And so I think it's unhealthy across the board. And yes, if you have people systematically put into their jobs that wouldn't have otherwise gotten that job on the basis of their genetic attributes like race or gender or sexual orientation or anything else, then if you apply meritocratic criteria afterwards, you are going to see a disparity in who's fired or not. It's not a controversial thing to say. If you got your job because of race, but then you're measured based on performance, yes, I think it is likely that people of certain demographic attributes may be more likely to get fired from those positions. I think the right answer across the board is forget the attribute of race or gender or sexual orientation in the first place and just hire the best person for the job. If it's in journalism, who's actually going to do the best journalistic work and report that to their audiences? If it's in medicine or in science or engineering or whatever it is. And I think that, ironically, then you're going to see less of those disparities in firings on the back end. Most people know this intuitively, but when you force them to bottle it up, I think they start to harbor animus, even racial animus. And the very people who are supposedly fighting racism through these anti-racist efforts are the ones actually throwing the kerosene, throwing the fuel on the final burning embers of racism in the first place, starting the whole cycle all over again. And sadly, Megyn, I think that's where we are.
It's so true, Vivek. I feel like we're just on the beginning of this wave where all these DEI programs, which now are being renamed, now they're just changing them to inclusion because DEI has been adequately stigmatized. Now it's just inclusion. Or our old school in New York is now, they've renamed DEI to belonging. It's just about belonging, which is a nicer word for a very problematic thing. So as a result of all these programs, all these folks who were, maybe not qualified were elevated based on skin color or their lady parts or their heritage. And maybe some will make it because they have the merit, and many won't. And so this is the beginning wave of let's see how they do. And if they don't do well, they're going to blame that too on race. And what's the end result of that going to be? A hesitancy to hire these people. So this whole game, it does not inure to the benefit of the very people they hope to elevate.
Oh, it's self-defeating, of course, Megyn, but I think that's why they're codifying a lot of those on the front end as well. It's an interesting jujitsu move that you described. You now are going to see a retreat in the use of the word DEI, different word, same concept. You actually see that in the corporate sphere as well. ESG has earned itself a negative valence, a negative connotation as well. I founded a firm called Strive that competes against BlackRock. We pushed hard on this. Now what are we seeing is a retreat from the use of that term, but they call it sustainable investing or whatever it is instead, adopting the same sort of social criteria. But they know this is going to have a discursive effect on stopping the hiring of those people on the front end on the basis of demographic attributes. And so that's why those are codified in some senses of quota systems. But where that then goes upstream, because it still hurts the very people it was supposed to help.
A recent survey found that 7 in 10 parents get an average of 3 hours of sleep a night in their baby's first year. Wow. Moms, you deserve quality sleep. And here's a solution: Cozy Earth. Discover the secret to better sleep with Cozy Earth's luxurious bedding products and get an exclusive Mother's Day offer just for you. Use the code Megyn, MEGYN, for 35% off at CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth bedding products are crafted with temperature-regulating technology, adapting to your body's needs through all phases of motherhood. Worried about commitment? Enjoy a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all purchases. Built to last through the hardest days and longest nights of motherhood, this Mother's Day, treat mom to the luxury she deserves with Cozy Earth bedding and sleepwear, and prioritize self-care and sleep health. Head on over to CozyEarth.com. Use the promo code Megyn for 35% off, and after placing your order, select podcast in the survey and select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Thank you so much for doing that. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.